Hello everyone, good day. We are the Group 6 and we will be discussing the impact of tourism and hospitality. And we are delighted to be here. And also, we are excited to report about this topic because it is one of those things that is referred to as interesting topic because of the situation we experience today. Okay, I hope that everyone will gain more knowledge and ideas about this topic. As I recall, that we are being afflicted with a different type of virus nowadays. I think it's almost 3 years, and I am aware that the tourism and hospitality industry have been affected already. So now let's proceed to the objectives or the goal of this topic. The unit objectives. First, explain the cultural contribution of the tourism and hospitality industry and discover its advantages and disadvantages. Second, assess the effect of tourism and hospitality to the economy of the country. Third, discuss and analyze the social contribution and how the tourists affect the daily lives of local residents. Fourth, realize the effect of the tourist to the environment and describe the role of stakeholders in protecting the natural attractions. And lastly, discover the ways towards achieving sustainable development. Tourism and hospitality are not exclusively economic phenomena. It also involves other aspects such as social, cultural, political, and environmental. It is therefore important to understand that any assessment of the tourism impacts should not only be limited to the tangible economic effects, such as revenue and foreign exchange earning of the country, but also with non-intangible and intangible effects, such as socio-cultural aspects. So it said, the tourism and hospitality industries are not mainly focused on economic, but also it involves in other aspects like social and environmental. These two aspects must be discussed later. But actually, tourism and hospitality is not only about you gain earnings and revenue, but also it involves how good you are when it comes to entertaining people, how you apply your knowledge in the field of tourism and hospitality industry, and other things. Do you have any idea about tourism and hospitality, about the possible impact of the culture? Culture derives from a French term, which in turn derives from the Latin word color, meaning to tend to the earth and grow, or to cultivate and nurture. And also, it is the characteristics of knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. Cultural tourism is the subset of tourism concerned with a traveler's engagement with a country or region's culture, specifically the lifestyle of the people in those geographical areas, the history of those people, their art, architecture, religions, and other elements that help shape their way of life. Cultural tourism is the practice of tourists visiting specific location in order to experience and learn about a specific culture. Also, it can be include a variety of activities. Example, attending events and festival, visiting museum, and sampling local foods and beverages. World Tourism Organization, or the WTO, in 1995 defined cultural tourism as the movements of persons who satisfy the human need of diversity, tending to raise the cultural level of the individual and giving rise to new knowledge, experience, and encounters. Traditionally, cultural tourism includes visits to historic buildings and sites, museums, art galleries, and etc. The viewing of the contemporary paintings or sculpture, or attendance to performing arts. Okay, let's proceed to the importance of cultural tourism. Cultural tourism can help reinforce identities. Second, it can enhance cross-cultural understanding between two different cultures. Third, it promotes cross-cultural connections, appreciation, and understanding of each other's culture. Fourth, preserve the heritage and culture of an area and encourage local residents to preserve national traditions. Fifth is tourists and hosts alike can learn more about different ways of life. It helps one to think objectively. And lastly, the interest of tourists in the country's cultural heritage can contribute to the sense of pride among local residents. These are the disadvantages of cultural tourism. First is culture clash. If the tourists do not respect the local culture, there will be disagreements. For example, in some middle countries, it is custom and proper for women to cover themselves up when they are on holiday, or maybe when they are on recreational activities, doing recreational activities. If you don't follow them, there would be a possible conflict within the society and may offend to the locals. Second, the commercialization of a culture may detract the tradition. Example of this is when you are promoting a kind of food in Marawi, like a fried pork chop or a kind of food that has a pork. It can may affect to the Muslim tradition and beliefs, right? Because as they said, eating a pork is a sin. So at that point, there would be a possible conflict will be happen. Third is the assimilation. The local people may copy the lifestyle of tourists, resulting in the loss of custom and traditions. Example of this is as you watch the news in TV Patrol or 24 Horas, you can see that a girl was being reported due to how she dressed. Fourth is loss of cultural integrity. The tourist may ruin the structural integrity of a religious site or any heritage site. Fifth is exploitation of cultural resources. To generate income, some local residents may sell the cultural significant possessions of the country. Next is the cultural shock. When a person becomes shocked and disoriented at a place because of the harsh contrast to their known lifestyle and costume, it might include the shock of a new environment, meeting new people, eating new food, or adapting to a foreign language, as well as the shock of being separated from the important people in your life, such as family and each other. Assimilation and acculturation are the two major concepts in sociology and deal with the change in people. In simple terms, assimilation is the process by which a person or a group's language or culture become similar to another culture or language. Acculturation is the exchange of cultural features that results when different groups come into continuous first-hand contact. Acculturation In acculturation, people retain their original culture features while adapting to the new culture. It is the second culture learning, the adoption of the customs and behaviors of the host society. Next is the assimilation. In assimilation, the people adopt the new culture and lose their original features. Assimilation occurs when an ethnic minority sacrifices its own culture to integrate into society. The cultural factors with tourist appeal. First is art. Art includes performing arts and fine arts, which exemplifies culture and aesthetic beauty. Forms of art include the live theater, music, and dance, and the latter includes painting, sculpture, graphic arts, which can be found in the exhibits and museums. Tattooing is also very famous among indigenous people to express arts. Architectural structures of buildings are also reminders of the talent and skill from historical artwork. And from the side of this text, that is the example of the art. Music and dance. Dance and music have played a remarkable role to attract tourists. Tourist destination can give the visitors many opportunities to enjoy and participate in the local music by showcasing multicultural and multiracial heritage, prominently exhibited in its diverse music and dance form. Evening entertainment programs, concerts, recordings, and sound reproduction systems are greatly appreciated by tourists. Musical folklore and folk dances represent the culture in a beautiful and unique way, which is incomparable to any other countries. Reciting poetry is also a trend to the millennials, and beside of the speaks is the example of the music and dance. Handicrafts sustain the relevance of our very own culture and tradition throughout generation, exemplifying the craftsmanship of Filipinos passed from the ancestor to the present generation. The genuineness of handicrafts create an appeal especially to the foreign market. Example, the Ilocos handloom weavers and barong embroidery of Lumban, Laguna. And this picture is the example of the handicrafts.
Industry and business. The visit to General Santos City was a very good prelude to industrial tours as the company will bring tourists to Fishport and show its flagship business. Group tours can be organized for manufacturers of specific product and develop interest in their product to increase sales. Example, walking tours. You could offer walking tours to tourists who want to genuinely experience this country. Before you start mapping out your route, here is an example of this tourism business idea that can offer you insight into this industry. Agriculture. The agriculture of country is rich source of enjoyment and satisfaction to large segment of tourists. Like for example, Laguna and Tagaytay were roadside stands selling fresh fruits, vegetables and products from nearby farms and available to tourists. Education. University of Santo Tomas being the oldest university in the Philippines, services and tourist attraction in Metro Manila. This is the widest university and accessible road and divided into literature and language. This deals with plays and events from fictional texts as well as the lives of their authors, books, magazines, newspaper, booklets, pamphlets, and other printed literary works are significant expression of culture of a country. Science. Tourists are fond of exploring scientific activities of a country, especially those in technical industries, education, or scientific research. Like for example, it covers interest of visiting and exploring scientific landmarks, including museums, laboratories, observatories, and universities. It also includes visit to see events of scientific interest. Government. Countries differ in the system of government. Visit to government offices such as capitals, the post office, and LGU offices are very motivating and educational. Some government officials are extending hospitality in welcoming guests to their offices. Religion. The religious tour is one of the most popular activities for the religious devotees. The most popular among the Muslims is the pilgrimage to Mecca. Like for example, religious tourism is a great source of community empowerment and development as well. The interest of tourists in local values and communities help in developing a sense of empowerment and pride in the local community, its culture and history. Food and drink. Good food is now considered a vital component of tourism experience. It adds entertainment to every hungry tourist. Example are Kamayan sa Palaisdaan Restaurant and Barrio Vista Restaurant in the Philippines. Kamayan sa Palaisdaan is the original Kamayan floating restaurant in the Philippines. It's one of the best places to eat in Tayabas, Quezon, and is in fact a tourist attraction in itself currently, aside from a restaurant. And next is a Barrio Vista Restaurant in the Philippines in 1958, officially opened her home as a Barrio Vista, one of the country's first fine dining restaurant. History. One of the motivation of tourists to travel is to experience the places and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past. Historical resources of country reveal its rich cultural heritage.
Tourism and hospitality impact to the economy. The role of tourism in economic development. First, there is a continuous demand for international travel in developed countries. Second, as income in developed countries increases, the demand for tourism also increases at the fastest rate. Third, developing countries need foreign exchange to aid their economic development. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, concluded that tourism provided a major opportunity for growth for countries that are at intermediate stage of economic development and require more foreign exchange earnings. Tourism is an invisible export which differs from international trade in many ways. First is, in tourism, the consumer collects the product from exporting countries. Second, the demand for pleasure travel is largely dependent on non-economic factors. Third, by using specific fiscal measures. And fourth, tourism is a multifaceted industry that directly affects several sectors in the economy. And five, tourism brings many more non-monetary benefits and costs than other export industries. For economic impacts, the positive effects of tourism is that tourism acts as an exporter industry by bringing in revenues from outside sources. And second, tourist expenditure increases the level of economic activity in the host area directly and indirectly and contribute to the growth of GDP, or gross domestic product. Third, tourism economic impact on a destination can be immense since it provides a source of income, employment, and foreign exchange. Now for the negative effects is 1. Economic leakage. It is the process whereby part of the foreign exchange earnings generated by tourism goes out of the country. Second, trade deficit inducement. A balance of payment represents the difference between expenditures and receipt of the country. When the expenditure exceeds its receipt, it's considered to have a deficit. And number 3 is product inflation. The increase in tourist expenditure will often put pressure on the prices as well as the cost of supplies and goods. Number 4 is land values. The increased demand for land increases demand for land for tourism faculties can increase demand for land for tourism facilities can increase building costs and land values. The direct and secondary effects. Direct, the income is received directly. For tourist expenditures received as income by business such as hotels, restaurants, car rentals, tour operators, and retail shops serving tourists have a direct effect on the economy of the host area. Secondary or indirect effects. Money paid by tourists to business are in form used to pay for supplies, wages of workers, and items used in producing the product bought by tourists.
Social impact of tourism and hospitality. Social tourism is the behavior of people who are no longer bound by societal or economic limitations. Tourists visit tourist destinations, which are referred to as a host communities. Culture refers to a society's customs, beliefs, social roles, and tangible things that are carried down through generations. There are positive effects and negative effects of social tourism. Through community tourism projects and recreational activities, tourism may serve as a catalyst for community strengthening, help travelers and hosts communicate more effectively. It allows people to learn from one another and share their knowledge and experience, developing friendships and promoting peace, increase the local population's income and living standards, contributes to the revitalization of local culture, traditional crafts, and customs, Inequity in the social sphere, job and economic structure changes have resulted in shifts in social roles. And these are the negative effects: the loss of language, community conflicts and tension, crowding and congestion, invasion of privacy to the host community, affecting the authenticity of indigenous traditional culture. Increased crime, create envy and resentment from the locals.
My name is Ray Joel Abriol, and I'm going to talk about the environmental effects or impacts of tourism. The environment today is and will continue to be the primary focus for the tourism industry. Yes, as as tourism involves, environmental stewardship and safeguard practices are being implemented. So the tourism involves some protection and safeguard the practices for tourism and also being implemented. Tourist organizations formulate long-term practices, policies, and devise sustainability development plans to recover, rebuild, and lastly minimize the impact of ecological disaster. So as we have all know that some of that are most of the tourist organization, they are formulating policies, rules, and in order to devise a sustainability development, and it plans to recover, rebuild, and lastly minimize its impact to our society. These are such example of the positive effects of the tourism in the environment. So first of all, respect for the vulnerability of ecosystem and protected areas, creation of sanctuaries to wildlife and marine animals helps taking better care of resources. So first, they are respecting the areas such as those areas who are vulnerable, and they have created sanctuaries where wildlife and animals can live and can be taken care of by resources. So second, ecotourism helps in sustainability of the environment. So what do you mean by ecotourism? Ecotourism means those people who are tourists that are into nature, and the main purpose of tourists of their tourism is to help the nature, and that's it. So third is to promote environmental awareness for preservation and conservation among the stakeholders, rehabilitation of the natural environment, and provide support to the local community through the provisions of infrastructure, especially the rural areas. So they help. The positive is also to help promote the environmental awareness for preservation and conservation. So in order to preserve the environment and to promote the awareness, they have to preserve and conserve among the stakeholders. So and just like in Boracay, they have their rehabilitation due to the some impacts that is not good in Boracay. They have the rehabilitation the in order the island in order to preserve, in order to have conservation and preservation of its, and that's all. Let's talk about the negative effects of tourism in the environment. So first, increase in tourists leads to an increased level of pollution. Air, water, and noise pollution will bring the disturbance to animals and marine life. So increased number of people in such area can increase also the level of pollution in the form of the water, air, noise, can bring the disturbance to animals and marine life. Congestion. Second, Congestion means high tourist arrival can lead to exceeding the carrying capacity of destination, which can affect the fragile environment. So, uh, high tourist arrival, just like in first there are many there are many tourists in Manila, which is came from other countries that to take a ride, and that can cause traffics and noise pollution and all, and air, so it can really affect to our environment. Third, intrusion to the natural habitat and damage to the landscape. Tourist activities may cause tension and physical damage to environment. Yeah, tourist activities might engage, or they can affect to the landscape of the environment because they will rebuild or re-landscape the environment. So collecting flowers, fruits will create changes in the species composition during hiking, trampling of vegetation, and losing and land cover reduce plant regeneration. So this is very common. Like some tourist spots, they say that do not collect, or do not destroy the the plants and flowers. You should, this very they have their own rules in some tourist spots where they're very strict at it, because just like they said, it can destroy and reduce the plant regeneration. So fourth, the impacts of the permanent environmental destruction. So this is impact the impact of it. In the Philippines, mining corals for result building materials has damaged the fragile coral reefs. Yeah, and deplete the fisheries and sustain the local ecosystem livelihood. So some land in the Philippines, they are mining corals, which can lead to damaging damage our fragile coral reefs. They are also living things which are vulnerable, and deplete the fisheries that sustain the local tourism livelihood. So it can really affect our livelihood, just like our fishermen, which they have the source in life, can affect their source in life. So the fifth, accumulation of garbage and generation of waste residual. So problems of solid waste, improper disposal, and littering can degrade and the appearance of the natural environment. So as we all know, without proper disposal, you have they are they have the very big impact to our environment, which can lead to pollution, air, water, and this type of pollution. And the sixth, overcrowding. Example, during summertime, when the tourists flock their way to the resorts and hotels. Overuse of water resources for hotels, swimming pool, golf courses, personal use of tourists. The tourist activity can cause great volume of water waste that can lead to water shortage in the nearby community and degradation of the supply. So, as you all know, overcrowding may lead to many problems. Just like they said, that from water overuse, some people in staying in a beach resort, they are overusing their water, just like they are making the water on, even though they don't need the water. Just they don't need the water, and very unuseful of doing things which can lead to water shortage and can can da- can affect to the environment. These are the types of tourists in the terms of motivational and behavior. First, we have the hard ecotourists. They prefer physical active and challenging experience that involve close personal contact with the nature, do not regard on site of services. So there are the tourists who it's like bring tent and wing foods in the nature with a proper way of disposing and responsible and all. So they are called the hard ecotourists. Second, the soft ecotourists prefer experiences that are less taxing and supported by accommodation, eating, parking lots, and other services. The commitment to the environment is not deep compared to hard ecotourists. So they are the soft ecotourists. They prefer less taxing means less pay and supported by accommodation. They are supported by accommodation means they stay in a hotel, sorts, eating, parking lots, and other services.
So I'm going to discuss sustainable tourism. UNWTO defines sustainable tourism as a tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. Sustainable tourism should: number 1, make optimal use of environmental resources that constitute a key element in tourism development. So basically, ang sustainable tourism kay nag-conserve siya sa environment and culture while nag-boost sa tourism. Maintaining essential ecological process and helping to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity. So, like, mas concern siya bitaw sa long run. Dili kay para naay tourism ang isa ka lugar, tukuran na og infrastructure na pwede makaguba sa tourist spot or environment. Ang iyang focus is makonserve ang environment para mulas pa siya o ma-preserve while still highlighting the beauty and tourism anang lugar. Second, respect the socio-cultural authenticity of host communities, conserve their build and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contribute to intercultural understanding and tolerance. So, tourism should respect both local and the travelers' cultural heritage and the environment while providing an exciting and educational holiday that is also of benefits of the host country. Last is ensure valuable long-term economic operations, providing socio-economic benefits to all stakeholders that are fairly distributed, including stable employment and income earning opportunities and social service to host communities, and contributing to poverty alleviation. As a complex economic activity, the goals of making tourism more sustainable face a set economic, environmental, social, and political challenges which requires adequate management and evidence-based public policies. The principles of sustainable tourism was proposed as early as 1988 by the World Tourism Organization, with sustainable being envisaged as leading to the management of all resources in such a way that economic, social, and aesthetics needs can be fulfilled while maintaining cultural integrity, essential ecological process, and biological diversity and life support system. So, shows the numbers of basic relations for sustainable tourism in this figure. So, which you can see the first area, which is interaction with the community. Muna sila ang the community and visitors exchange mo ang first area. The second area, which is private sectors, muna sila ang private ownership and control. Third area, public sectors include public goods and governmental services such as military, law enforcement, infrastructure, public transit, public education, along with the healthcare and those working for to go. Fourth area, the non-government organization. So, muna sila ang voluntary group of individuals or organization usually not affiliated with any government. The fifth area, muna sila ang pollution management. Muna sila ang examples, excluding conserving water and energy, minimizing greenhouse gases, slashing toxic emissions, using solid waste, controlling indoor air pollution, and getting a handle on pesticide risk. So, the sixth area, economic and infrastructure development. And the last is seventh area, which is protection of cultural and heritage. Relation basis for sustainable tourism. Sustainable tourism models ensures that tourism development is competitive and respects the conservation and protection of natural, social, and cultural, which means that it is the tourism industry, visitors, and the environment. So, as a responsible tourist, kung kita mo visit sa ang lugar, we must be responsible to sustain tourism by respecting local cultures, conserving resources, favoring business which preserve cultural heritage, and support local economies by purchasing local goods and act in an environmental cautious way. For example, no, we need to be conscious on what we doing. Kung sa pagsimpleng labay sa itong basura, dako na kay nag-impact to sustain our tourism.